Dan Fogelman has made some really good movies in the past, and some decent ones too. Cars, Crazy Stupid Love, Danny Collins. I usually like his stuff. And the cast in this one looked pretty insane, to be honest. Oscar Isaac, Olivia Wilde, Olivia Cooke, Annette, and those are just a couple of them. There's at least like 10 recognizable names in this thing. So you know, I was pretty excited to watch this. And then the reviews started coming in. And to say they were bad would be a slight understatement. It's currently sitting at a 21 on Metacritic and 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now I haven't actually read any of them. I will after this. But the headlines are enough. I've seen phrases like worst movie of the year and disaster thrown around. Now what's interesting though is that the audience scores aren't nearly as bad. 5.9 on IMDb isn't good, but it's not awful. And 79% on Rotten Tomatoes definitely isn't bad. But you know what? None of that really managed to have a negative impact on me. If anything, it just made me even more curious. So what's it about? Well, it's a story split into a bunch of chapters for different characters. And it's essentially split into 2 parts too, but I'll get into that a bit later. And it jumps around in time and basically chronicles the story of a family through the generations. But you don't know that. For almost the entire first half of the movie, you don't really know what's going on, or where it's going with it. I thought it was going to be one kind of movie, centered around the character of Oscar Isaac. But it's not. That's just the first part of the story, and then it turns into something very different. And I loved it. I thought it was great. The first half especially. It was different, it took some pretty major risks, and I honestly thought it pulled it off to near perfection. The characters are wonderful and endearing, the performances are great, and while it is ultimately a deeply tragic story, it's also really funny. That's the first half. Now the second half I didn't love as much, and the end was a bit too sappy for my taste, but I still liked the second half a lot, even if it kinda changes tone and is mostly in Spanish, and I didn't have any subtitles on. But it really didn't need any. It still managed to convey everything it needed to, because of the fantastic performances. And those really were the highlights for me. Everyone, no matter how small a role, was really great in this. The casting and the direction was excellent across the board. And I loved the writing too, especially in the first half. It's phenomenal. There are 2 events near the end of that segment that just blew me away. I thought it was brilliant. Now I do have some complaints. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, the whole last chapter felt a bit rushed. And I especially think the part with the kid's girlfriend was a bit of a misstep. It just felt out of place for me, tonally. Now it did work. It achieved what it set out to do, story-wise. And I actually thought it was kind of funny, but it just didn't fit in with the rest of it that well. And as I mentioned, the very end, how it wrapped it all up, felt a bit too sappy for me. I did like the concept and the idea, but I think the execution on a technical level fell a bit short. I mean, the music, the pacing, the editing, it just didn't work for me. But that's really only the last 10 minutes or so of what I thought was a great movie. Now that being said, I do understand if someone doesn't like this movie. I can see why. And tastes differ and everyone's entitled to their opinions, of course. But this is not the worst movie of the year. It just isn't. Simple as that. The performances alone and the ambition put it so far above all those lazy cash grabs that don't care and don't even try, that this couldn't possibly be the worst movie of the year. And from a narrative standpoint, everything fits together. It weaves this complex generation-spanning story, but brings it all together in the end. And all the little details they sprinkled throughout come into play too. Especially the whole Bob Dylan tie-in, which I thought worked really well. So yeah, would I recommend it? Absolutely. Go watch it. Or don't. I'm not your dad.